evening, everyone. I'm Gray Miners with Bermuda Broadcasting News with your early evening newscast. Some breaking news last evening. The Biden administration is developing a plan to require nearly all foreign visitors to the United States to be fully vaccinated against COVID-19. It's part of a move to eventually lift travel restrictions that bar much of the world from entering the United States, a White House official told Reuters on Wednesday. Upgrades to the city of Hamilton's wastewater infrastructure will have major environmental benefits, it was announced today. 2 fine mesh screening machines at the Front Street wastewater treatment plant will remove approximately 40% of suspended solids from the city's wastewater. That's roughly 1,210 liters of solids enough to fill a dumpster that reduce the volume and harmful macro and microplastics entering the ocean at the South Shore outfall and see fewer grease balls washing up on the South Shore. City engineer Patrick Cooper said a community sewer system discharging to the ocean off the South Shore has serviced the area for over 100 years. There have been previous upgrades, notably in 2015, when the filtering system was improved, partly to tackle the grease ball problem. Mr. Cooper said the city's fats, oils, and grease policy from 2014, which requires businesses to properly dispose of their waste, had made a big difference. The city collects about 5 tons of waste cooking oil per week. And some positive entertainment news for you this afternoon. Music mogul and fellow islander Rihanna is officially a billionaire. The news hitting headlines this week after Forbes reported that the Barbadian singer's multiple business ventures has seen her amass a $1.7 billion fortune, the bulk of which comes from her Fenty beauty supply. Thousands of fans and followers on social media applauded the star, who came from humble beginnings in Barbados. And that's your early evening newscast. I'm Gray Miners with Bermuda Broadcasting News.
All right, let's check out the weather right now. Partly cloudy skies for tonight, 78 degrees for the low. Checking ahead for Friday, becoming mostly sunny skies, a chance of an afternoon shower as well. Winds out of the east to southeast, moderate winds for Friday, high around 85 degrees, low at 79. For the weekend on Saturday, bright and sunny to start with, east to southeasterly winds with a high 85 degrees, a low at 78. Checking out for Sunday, early clouds. Going to be fading towards evening, though. High 86, a low 77. And for Monday next week, 84 for the high, a low at 79 degrees here in Bermuda.
This weather update was provided by the Bermuda Weather Service, sponsored by
The Weather Service. And it's time now for a motion to adjourn with host MP Chris Famous and Dwayne Robinson.
And good afternoon. Welcome to the post-cop match, post-emancipation, post-Mary Prince Day.
Post St. George's loss. I had to do that one here. I know whistling your, I know.
We could have left that till somebody actually showed up.
Where is he to? I don't see
He's not here.
He's not here. Is he coming?
He's not here. But anyway, folks, welcome to another special edition of motion to adjourn. This is our today, as we have committed to do in our show, is to broaden our audience and broaden our topic. And this is our monthly territories talk, where we have persons calling in us what's going on in those territories, so we can see the similarities of all the territories and show that we are one people. So today's guest, we have one guest from the British Virgin Islands, or commonly known as the Virgin Islands, or VI. And then we have another guest from the Cayman Islands, commonly known as CI. So without further ado, I will allow the guests to introduce themselves because I most likely will mess up the introduction. So initially we'll have the lady from the Virgin Islands. Good day.
Good afternoon, Chris and Eden.
Hi.
I am Shayna Smith Archer, for those who don't know me. So happy to be here. I'm really excited about this. And daughter of the soil in the Virgin Islands. Yes, Virgin Islands is our official name, Chris. So that's us.
Okay.
But yeah, I am happy to look forward to the conversation that we have today. We got a long lineup of topics. But I'm gonna give our perspective on things here and how I think we all need to collaborate more and work together and have more conversations like this.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. And I also must add, I'll get to it later on, but there's a little touch of nepotism involved, and I'll get to that in a minute. And I also must add a guest who is not a stranger to calling in this show, because he has called in before, and our good friend, and you are?
Hi, Chris. I'm Eden Hurlston. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. And I'm coming from Cayman Islands up in Old Rock, West Bay.
That's the Republic of West Bay.
That's right. That's right. Best way, baby.
All right.
And I'm a rascal.
So when you say rascal, you have to put it in context, because some people in different islands may interpret rascal as something that's not positive.
Well, we are realists, but people get confused when we use the word realist. So I like to say that we relentlessly advocate solutions, community, and love rascals.
Ah.
That's what we do. We stay up at night caring and get up in the morning and put in the work to try to make future generations have a better time.
All right. So we're also doing something new today. We are streaming via the graces of Mrs. Shayna Smith Archer. She has set us up on StreamYard, so we are broadcasting not only on the radio in Bermuda, but the radio in the Virgin Islands, and also over Facebook. So folks in Cayman Islands and Virgin Islands and Bermuda Islands can actually be part of the conversation. Log on to my page if you're into Bermuda. If you're in Bermuda, log on to Shayna's page if you're in how do you pronounce it properly?
Vigilati Dialogues.
Vigilati Dialogues in the Virgin Islands, and Eden's page if you are in the Cayman Islands, because we are looking to broaden our horizons. So, topping our list, we have, this is the Olympics. 5 years in the making. And for all of our territories, this has been a fabulous Olympics. And we'll get to what happened for Bermuda, but we'll start off with you, Eden. What has happened for your athletes that competed in the Olympics?
Well, we had some good showings.
Here we go. I had my mic mute on the StreamYard there. I got to get used to this stuff. But and we're very proud of our athletes. I think we could have a lot more support for them. We don't even have an Olympic-sized pool, for instance, for training. But really, the whole country is very proud of them. Some of us are confused about the Olympics happening at all while the pandemic is still going on, and the lack of vaccinations being mandatory for the athletes and things like that. But you know, it's a good thing to bring the world together, and that we can all focus on some positive things where our athletes shine.
Okay. And for the Virgin Islands, tell us what happened with your athletes.
Well, we had 3 athletes that participated. We had in swimming, athletics, and women's long jump. Um, Chantal Malone, our athlete in the long jump, she made it actually to the finals. She didn't make it to the podium, but we're very happy that she was able to make it there. Elena Phillips, I think this was her first Olympics, and she was in the swimming, the 50-meter freestyle. Did well in her heat, and we're happy that she even made a showing. So, but our pride and joy, I would say, of the moment is Kyron McMaster, who ran in the 400-meter men's hurdles, and he came in fourth. But then now he's in there was a world record broken. So now in terms of his time, he's right up there with the best of the best. So we were beaming with joy over that moment, because again, any accomplishment just to even make it to the Olympics, it's a big accomplishment. So I don't want people to understate it. Sometimes because people don't make it to the podium, they kind of discount it. But there's a lot of effort that goes in behind the scenes leading up to those couple seconds on the track, or the time in the pool, or jumping on the pit. So we want to congratulate them again. People have been sending out shout outs on Facebook all week, recognizing them. So that's a great thing.
Yeah. And for us in Bermuda, we haven't had our show done. Oh, sorry. My apologies. Let me introduce my co-host, the engineer, Mr. Don Bassett. He won't be on camera because of situation here, but he is on the air. So, yeah, they should. You hear Don? You guys are hearing Don?
Hello.
Okay. So Don, tell us what happened with we had 2 or 3 athletes. I think we didn't have a big contingent this year, but tell us what happened with 2 of our athletes.
I know you want to go after.
Right. So what we have to be proud of as overseas territories is that our populations, in an example, in the Virgin Islands, your population is 30,000. In Cayman Islands, it's 60,000. In Bermuda, 60,000. But we all have had athletes that have competed in it, not just made it to the Olympics, but made it to the finals, right? 4th, beating out countries that there are millions of persons. If you look at Miss Malone, she didn't medal, but she made it to the finals, where countries with millions of people did not make it to the finals. And if you look at even the young lady, Miss Gray, I want to say, countries with millions of people did not make it. And yeah, sorry, Ray. I knew it was something to do with liquor. Ray and nephew. You have for us in Bermuda, you have Miss Flora Duffy from an island of 65,000, less than 65,000 persons. She literally beat the breath, as we say in Bermuda, beat the breath out of somebody from England and America. So we have a lot to be proud of as small islands, that we are producing athletes, or our athletes are producing the results that they are doing. And even if they didn't medal, they are our heroes. Flora, this was her 3rd or 4th, she came 8th one year, she didn't finish one year. It's been a host of issues, but she was persistent. So if Ms. Malone and Mr. McMaster and the
Miss Phillips.
persons in Cayman Islands, Ms. Ray and others, if they
Mhm.
be persistent,
It's yep.
we will
Reagan Ruddy.
get on that podium. And what I loved most, she wasn't doing it just for herself, right? She wasn't doing it just for herself. She was doing it. She wasn't doing it just for Bermuda. She was doing it for the whole Caribbean, right? She considers herself as part of the Caribbean. So we all have to, applaud not and from the Caribbean region at large because Jamaica is just so So
Jamaica did us all proud. That's for that.
what
That
do we
is for
have
sure.
next to talk about?
Oh yeah.
And I think that this is a good thing about gaining some regional unity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We should be cheering for each other's teams and for any of the triumphs that go on. You know, we need to be aware of where we've come from as a people, and that we're only going to get someplace positive if we stick together. And this region has so much to share with each other.
Yeah. So the next topic we're going to talk about is we are going to talk about what's happening with COVID. I mean, we're looking on the news. We just heard on our local news that the U.S. is looking to make it mandatory that anyone traveling to America has to have a vaccine or be vaccinated, correct term. Jabbed up. So what's happening with the COVID situation in your country, Eden?
There is positive news in that we are very highly vaccinated. I believe it's 70. We're over 70% for both jobs for sure, and getting close to 70 for 2 jobs. But the uptake has gone, down quite a bit. And we're aiming for 80% in order to activate the full tourism, the reopening plan. So we're facing some difficulties in that. We're staring down the barrel right now of mandating vaccines for work permit holders, and there are some private entities that are starting to exercise their own rights as far as if putting it out there that they want their employees to be vaccinated if they're going to be on the front line and service and being directly in touch with people in the public, especially moving toward reopening, holding out bonuses if people aren't vaccinated, and limiting access to places as well as a possibility that's being talked around. But we see it happening in the States. In New York, they just made a comprehensive policy about having people requiring vaccines to get into certain venues and different things like that. And so I think that we're going to be seeing this sort of thing happen. I'm a lot of people here aren't confident about reaching 80% here. I personally feel that it's important everywhere, especially for small island nations like the 3 of our places and the just smaller populations, where one case can mean a lot. A rapid spread can happen not because we have a lot of congestion, but because we have such a small population, where a few cases can leave a lot in its wake. We need to have reopening plans, plural, as in some layered approaches to doing it and making sure that things can stay safe and as manageable as possible. And we need to have staying closed plans, plural. So we have other approaches in case another variant pops up or anything happens and we have to shut back down, that we don't have complete closure and a lot of people being left out in the cold, so to speak, and try to avoid socioeconomic fallout that's been coming along with this health fallout. So a lot of people in the tourism industry are hurting right now and don't see another option other than activating a reopening plan. There's not a lot to put our teeth into right here other than saying let's try to make it to 80%. So it's tough. I'm in an events-based business where it takes people a few months to plan weddings, especially with doing a destination wedding or something like that. That's what I would make a lot of my income from in the winter seasons. Oh, that's much better. And so my season is pretty much shot because I've had quite a few inquiries and clients who were looking to plan something here, and the time just ran out, and they just don't have the confidence to still stay booked with us and have us provide their services and come to Cayman because they just don't know if they're going to be able to do it. So they've either changed plans or they've gone to Turks and Caicos or they've done something else. But so we're just hanging on, and hoping for the best and hoping that people get vaccinated, and thankful that we've been able to kind of live in this safety bubble for so long. But it's not easy here for people in the tourism industry, especially people like myself who are owner operators and who have been invested for years, and we can't just pivot out and go pick up a job somewhere else. And it's and I have a family, and so it's different if you're a young person, you're serving tables and you can go do this and do that and swing around. But it's people are in different situations, and for many of us in the tourism industry, it's very stressful. That's for sure. What is it like in Virgin Islands?
Yes. No,
Shayna?
Zach.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So, Chris, you have to mute your mic when we talk. That's where the echo is coming from. All right. Great. Yeah. Similar to what Eden expressed, our economies are heavily based around tourism. And of course, no, the pandemic, that was one of the first things that stopped, where we closed borders to prevent traffic, to get a handle around things. So, over the last year and a half, it's been a gradual opening back up of borders in terms of to travel, apart from nationals coming in and out, in terms of coming back home, that we're allowing visitors to come in and to start to produce economic activity. So it has been a challenge in terms of the levers of the protocols. Sometimes we're on, sometimes we're off, and it's understandable because again, this is unprecedented for everybody. So we're trying to figure this out in a way. But I think a year later, we have a good sense of what we need to do. We know the public health protocols work. We realize, especially that when we just recently had an outbreak, where we were in the thousands of cases, and that was a first for us because we hadn't experienced anything like that last year. We did have a spike last year, August actually. But again, it's all around now. How do we stimulate the economy still within? Because the charter boats, the yachts, they're back out on the water. Is that income bracket? They're already out there traveling and trying to get away and get some kind of sense of normalcy, I guess. But it's still the smaller villas and guest properties that are definitely looking forward to November to see what happens. But I think the key thing around what we talk about, the public health protocols, the vaccinations. I saw the article Chris you shared, about the US's plan in terms of opening the borders, but listening to the World Health Organization today, there's still large inequity around the vaccination process. And it's like, this is a pandemic. It's not just in certain countries. And for us to really pull out of this, it's got to be more widespread in terms of the vaccinations, whether within this region or even in the larger countries. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next 3 months, I think, especially for us now as we're trying to gradually, encourage tourism travel and put things back into play, especially for the small businesses. Because like you said, Eden, it's the micro and the small ones that are really feeling the crunch right now without any meaningful economic activity. We're seeing the global factors of inflation getting things here in terms of material and imports, it's a nightmare as a project manager. I can tell you firsthand, we're working on some projects, and every 3 months we're having to say, we're gonna add some more time to the schedule because it's hard. It's really hard in terms of how things have been so disrupted and still is, from an economic standpoint. So vaccine uptake, again, similar to you guys, we have a target of 80 as the buffer, 70, 75 as a good place to be, and making sure that we continue to pursue that. I think we just lost Chris. Okay, hopefully he pops back in.
Maybe he just came off camera for a second. It's interesting that the similarities of what's going on, even with different some different strategies being employed, and like for instance, we've had a lot of small business input. There's a lot of input from the sector going into directly to people making decisions, and so we have a lot of stakeholder buy-in in the process, and a lot of places aren't having as good of luck with that, and yet Cayman, we're not putting ourselves in a position. We're supposed to have a soft reopening September 9th, and all fingers crossed and prayers answered, October 14th we're supposed to be reopening to some visitors. Now, we have had some movies and shows filming here and things like that, so I feel like quite a while ago we could have kind of started widening from that circle as a strategy and still been kept stayed pretty safe by having a layered approach and multifaceted approach, but we have decided to err on the side of caution, which has its benefits for sure, and especially in addressing the health emergency that is COVID, but the socioeconomic fallout really isn't getting addressed. There's not a lot of comprehensive programs going on per se, and then as well, we're more dependent on the development dollar, which is wreaking havoc in Cayman. Are you finding that there as well? Is it more that, like, are you seeing more dependence, possibly to a fault and on other industries, or are you able to regulate that and still keep some prosperity flowing around, relatively speaking?
You can see the impact because, again, hotels, they're supplied by the grocery stores, the liquors, everything that goes into what their services are. So it's a domino effect. They definitely felt it in terms of, if restaurants, let's say, for example, we have a curfew right now from 7 o'clock. There's no in dining at the restaurants. You can take out. So it tells you, definitely there's going to be reduced business activity, because then normally, even if tourists are here, they would, go for dinner, especially. And that's where, restaurants make the bulk of their money. So those types of things, even from last year, once we did, open back up after the initial lockdown, that we saw definitely a reduced level of business activity, and it was a knock on. So, businesses definitely cried out and said, definitely reduce in terms of revenue. It's a lot less, in terms of just relying on the domestic population. We did a lot of staycation promotion last year as well, again, to try to stimulate the tourism industry and encourage people to, enjoy the islands. Because for most of us, we like to go and travel, especially, around your summertime or your Christmas holidays. And a lot of that was restricted this year. So that's what's happening. So what's been happening in Bermuda, Chris? So you have to unmute your mic, Chris. Okay, I think they're on a news break right now. Eden.
Yeah, there's a news break going on.
Okay.
Yeah, we've it's been a interesting ride this last year.
Yep. Okay, let's see if he pops back up. All right, so thanks to those who are tuned in. See you guys in the comments. Yeah, we're having some technical difficulties. Hopefully Chris pops back in. But there are actually, the Bermuda station is on a news break right now. So as soon as that over, hopefully he pops back in.
Yeah, thank you for hosting the live stream, and I hope some looks like some folks are catching it on Facebook and everything. I've been really enjoying your page and your media. It's refreshing and enlightening and informative, and it's fantastic. The style and it's fantastic. Real pride of the Caribbean. I'm glad to have found it through this connection and make this connection. Fantastic.
Thank you. That's my hobby. People think I get paid for it, but that's my hobby.
You should be getting paid for it.
We'll work on it in another life.
Yeah.
All right, Chris is back. I think the news break is still on. Okay.
30 seconds.
Now back to motion to adjourn and be presented and win Robbie. Yes, and welcome back to our movie edition of Territory Story Public. Multiple draws, authentic,
So Chris, we need you to unmute on Facebook. I need you to unmute on Facebook. I need you to unmute. We're not hearing you on Facebook.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, my apologies.
There you go.
There we go.
Yeah. It always takes the women to guide the man, right? What's happening in Bermuda is that we have had, I wouldn't say close our borders, right? Our borders weren't closed, right, Brother Dawn? But what we had to do was put in some stringent and, let me be frank, unpopular measures that persons coming into the island, if you are immunized, you have to take a test upon entry. Then you have to take a test on the 4th day. You have to take a test on the 8th day, and you have to take a test on the 14th day. For those who were not immunized, they had to be quarantined or quarantined at a local hotel. So what that meant is, as soon as they came off the plane, they were tested, and then they were taken on via minibus, let me be clear, to a local hotel where they had to have to remain for 14 days. And what that had done is give a layer of protection that anyone who was unimmunized was not in the general population, I guess, for lack of a better word. It proved to be very unpopular because it wasn't so much that you had to be quarantined, but the government said, hey, you're going to have to pay for this yourself. So that means persons were paying upwards of from $3,000 for the cheap hotel, and then some more money if they were staying at the high-end hotel. So far we have maybe three to 400 persons that fell in that category. Um, as of late, what we've seen happening is that as of let's say yesterday, we have maybe about 60 active cases. Um, there's three persons in the hospital, one person is in ICU, and 89% of those cases that have come up are persons who are unimmunized, unvaccinated. So what does that tell us? Is that the Delta variant is there. The Delta variant is something we have not seen before. We have not experienced this. So even if you are immunized, you could potentially have it and potentially pass it on to others. But what's happening in America and other places in the world, those that are catching it, and not everyone, let's be clear, not everyone who catches it ends up in the hospital. But those that do end up in the hospital and unfortunately pass away, it's almost 90% persons who are unvaccinated. So every country is now grappling um, with this thing. The CDC just put out a new list today of places that they are telling Americans not to go to, particularly in the Caribbean. They're telling people not to go to St. Martin, not to go to Guadeloupe, not to go to Barbados, not to go to their own U.S. Virgin Islands. They're telling people not to go there because the COVID is raging. So the point to everyone, whether it be Bermuda, Cayman Islands, who is unopened right now, and Virgin Islands, who unfortunately um, are experiencing a massive outbreak, is that as much as we like to put faith in natural medicines or the fact that we're surrounded by sea and salt and sunshine, that is not going to cure COVID. Not. So the challenge, we have to look at more persons getting immunized. In Bermuda, we are like 65, 66% immunized. In Cayman Islands, you're around 70%. Unfortunately, in the Virgin Islands, the last statistic that I got was that you're still less than 40% fully immunized, hence why, unfortunately, you've seen 37 deaths. And from what I've understood, all of those deaths are persons who were not immunized. And there was a question that came up. Can you bring it back up again? It was from someone that came in Islands as far as reopening. Um, Hello from Cayman. Can you guys speak on what you think some different opening closing scenario options may look like? Uh, well, if people in Bermuda, we are trying not to go back to a lockdown because that hurts our economy. That has killed many jobs. Many businesses won't survive that. I'm sure the same in every country, but especially in small economies such as ours that are heavily dependent on tourism. Those who work in hospitality, whether it be in hotels, or drive taxis or so on, for over a year they have not seen any steady income. So we have to, as governments and more so as the people of these islands, have to get serious about our vaccination program. That's Unfortunately, that's the reality in which we're living. So I'll turn that over to you now, Shayna, to answer this lovely lady's question.
Okay, I think for us here in the Virgin Islands, one of the key things that we, again, like you're saying, the health protocols and all of those in terms of policy have to be in place. One of the biggest challenges that we have though is, I was talking to Eden beforehand about the social safety nets. We don't have unemployment benefits. We don't have a scheme in place that triggers business relief. Let me put it like that. So a one-off program was done last year, and that was for about 3 months. And I think at that time, we were hoping that by December we would be in the clear of this thing. But as we've seen now, every economy is in some type of recession, and with that, no, it's really a survival mode here on the ground in the Virgin Islands. We had some challenges with government policies that went into play a couple months ago, raising port fees. So again, that on top of inflation measures where we're seeing the prices of goods go up. As small island nations, we know that we bring in 99.9% of what we consume. So that is quite a hurdle, I would say, that has to be jumped right now. So it's something where it's behoove around in terms of businesses, especially here, to have business continuity plans. So we saw a lot of businesses, if they could work remotely, they went into remote working mode. And anytime we've had to restrict movement of persons and persons have to work from home, they do that. But then again, the particular industry of tourism now, you can't work remotely for a restaurant, or car rental, or, even your trucking business. Because again, all of these are dependent on each other. So there's quite a bit of integration in terms of the industries across each other. Cruise ships, we've had that beautiful pier park now basically kind of been on a hiatus for the last 18 months because, we had one ship that's come so far. But again, the type of traffic, like you said, the taxi men, they're not seeing that. So they've been doing some of the transportation services in terms of picking up persons that have to go from the ports of entries into quarantine. And the government initially picked up the tab on that, but then it went now to the traveler. So if you're coming in, then you have to pay for your transportation, as usual, I would say. But yeah, it's a matter of we seeing businesses have to get very creative because the assistance that would sometimes typically be there, and it's something that we are lobbying for as a business community, that we do have these things because we saw the same outcome after the hurricanes in 2017, where again, as a business, you had to go into all your reserves to be able to build back infrastructure, continue to pay the employees. And I think that's one of the biggest strains on businesses right now, where you're trying to keep your employees paid, even if it's reduced hours or even reduced wages in some instances we heard about last year. So again, until the economic activity really ramps back up, it's gonna put a lot of people out of business. That's the unfortunate reality. So yeah, you're right, Chris. In terms of looking at frontline, we have had some businesses here that are in the tourism industry that have mandated that their employees need to be vaccinated because they have to look at, if I have to close because one employee may have been exposed and that means they expose the entire staff, how does that work? So there are those that they've had to put their staff on shift so that if one shift does have to go out on self-isolation, then they're able to still continue to do business. So it's really a tough road we're traveling on right now. And yeah, I don't think any government wants to have to close down the economy because it's, even if you're just managing off of the local population, something is better than nothing. And that's what a lot of businesses are saying, because you still have to pay the light bills, you still have to pay the bank, and everybody else in terms of your creditors and suppliers. So it's really a hard time right now. So we're just hoping and praying once the current outbreak subsides, get everything under control. Again, we're adhering to the protocols, inclusive of the recommendation on the vaccine, that everyone stays vigilant, because I think that's one of the key things that I learned, that we can't get complacent because the virus is still very much alive and well and very aggressive from what we're seeing now with these different variants. Because again, there's Delta, but today World Health Organization was talking about variant of interest, Lambda, and that is already in 40 countries. So it is a very dynamic situation that we're having to manage. And I think with the right messaging around, persons understand their personal responsibility, in addition to what the businesses and the government, all of us have to come together and rally and do what's necessary.
Yeah, it's really, you touched on an important point there as far as the cost of living and the cost of doing business in general when your revenue is stretched and your personal income might be next to nothing if you're dependent on tourism. And we're having a ton of inflation here. Every 2x4 you buy is 4 times as much. Every one of the my brother was just at a popular restaurant getting takeaway last night, and every item has gone up by $1. And it's meanwhile, so many people are struggling just to have make some money. But as far as opening plans and closing scenario options, there's of course a huge movement. And I mean, this is my wife asking this question, so we've talked about it at length. But as far as closing scenarios, there's a huge movement for us to take climate action, especially in the Caribbean. We have sea level rise going on. We have climate change happening. We have a lot of environmental threats happening, a lot of biodiversity loss. And then what goes interlinked with that is a lot of devastation to our cultures, our communities, our ways of life. And I think that there's a lot of international funding available to be able to reinvest in that. So that might be a way of bringing some outside capital in and getting people who have boats, have buses. If you're taking scientists around to do stuff, or taking people around to plant trees, or taking people to investigate corals and see what's going on with them, or plant mangroves, then you can still be working. And so it's a way to pivot people who have transportation-based tourism industries into doing another activity that's going to be of benefit to the entire country. And it can still even work as far as doing reopening plans, because I mean, one of the obvious things, like I said, about widening the circle, for us, we haven't really had reopening, but we have had highly selective visitation going on. So movie crews, television crews, different scientific endeavors that have been happening. I think we should expand the circle on those, maybe even go to one-on-one sports, stand-up paddle boarding, and different things like that, to where you can get these more controllable people coming in who are, if you're part of a team or part of an organization, it's much easier to make sure everyone is vaxxed, much easier to make sure where everyone is staying. And so again, if people are able to work those type of things, and where it's not just the gates are flung wide open and anyone and everyone can come in, but you have a lot of control over the visiting that's going on, then I think that's one way to look at opening, and that can work side by side still with pursuing climate action and trying to involve people in the tourism industry to get involved in that, especially if they have charter businesses, because the charter business owners here are a lot of the people who are really in tight spots. They have hundreds of thousands of dollars invested into boats and buses and different things, and they're just not running. And the worst thing in the world for those things is to not run. And someone who has all that equity put in can't just pivot and be like, okay, I'm just going to be a construction worker now, or I'm just going to be, it's not that simple and clear cut a thing. You don't just go for job training and come out of a 30-year long career that you have $500,000 invested into. And so, alongside with that is we are so dependent on development now. It's really working at a disadvantage to us, because the fees that are coming from development, and the fees that are coming from selling properties to people who are investing from overseas, sight unseen. People are buying property in Cayman without ever having visited here and developing on it. And it's driving up the cost of living and the cost of property. We're pricing ourselves right out of the property market. And so this is going to have far-reaching 2 generations long effects, because we we're so dependent on it right now, and we're not reopening to the tourist dollar or finding creative ways to go about bringing other revenue in and shoring up the other pillars of our economy. So it really is a situation with a lot of intricacy to it. And I think in nations like we're talking about, like ours, with small populations, where a few cases can mean a lot of damage, we have to think at multiple levels and think of layered approaches. And there is no cure. There is no getting rid of this. There is going to be other situations like this that come across the world. Like you say, the Lambda variant is being discussed now, and this thing is slow evolving, so it could mutate again in a few months' time, and we have to be prepared to deal with that. So we can't just make a plan that's saying, okay, this is how we reopen and get everything back to normal. I think we're literally in the realm of a different kind of normal. We really have to think more creatively about how we are going to ensure well-being and welfare for everyone involved, not just those who can weather the storm easily because they're financially insulated from the situation. And I think that that's what's happening, is some disparity going on here, you know?
Sorry, we're going to go to a question that came in from the BVI from Mr. Carl Dawson. He asks, and I want Brother Dawn to answer this one, have affected groups such as taxi associations, hotel workers, hotel workers unions advocated to have persons take vaccines given that they are greatly impacted. And Brother Dawn, I want you to come in on that answer.
Well, right now, there's no, we don't have to. It's not mandatory that we take, vaccine. It's just up to the individual cab driver if he wants to be vaccinated or not. Otherwise, than that, it's not mandatory.
Because thank you, Brother Dawn. One of the things that happened here in Bermuda is that the Hotel Association, they've never come out and said, okay, all hotel workers should be vaccinated. But what they have said is that as an association, that those who are not vaccinated should be subject to weekly tests. Now, the challenge therein is that what your medical basis is supposed to be confidential, right? Whether I'm vaccinated or not, my boss should not know this. If I choose to say, hey, I'm vaccinated, that's my business. If I choose to say, hey, I'm not going to get vaccinated, that's my business. That's privacy. So the ethical question that came up was, how would employers know who's vaccinated from who isn't vaccinated, number one? And number two, how can you legally force people to take a test every week? Because that's now becomes a form of dictation, I guess you would say. So what has happened in Bermuda is actually that the union that represents hotel workers is called the Bermuda Industrial Union. They actually came out strongly against the employers, saying that that's a violation of workers' rights, that the unvaccinated are being forced to take these weekly tests, based on the grounds that employers not supposed to know your status anyway. I know in Cayman Islands that, and correct me if I'm wrong, there is no union for hotel workers, correct? And in the Virgin Islands, there is no union for hotel workers, correct?
No, we only have a hotel association. That's part of the Chamber of Commerce.
So, from what I've seen in the Virgin Islands, I can't speak to the Cayman Islands, but what I've seen in the Virgin Islands, it started in Oil Knot Bay, if I'm mistaken, in Virgin Gorda, where the employers were saying that if you're not vaccinated, you're going to have to take a weekly test, or you're going to have to stay home from work, or something or the other. And people were crying for the government to step in. From what I've seen, the government has said employers have a right to demand certain things. So the challenge, especially in the hospitality industry, is almost like a damned if you do and a damned if you don't. For those who want to work, you need tourists coming in. Tourists are only going to come into a country that they feel safe. The only way for the country to be safe, right? Let's be real. The only way for the country to be safe from COVID is to have a high percentage of persons immunized. and especially those who are in contact with guests who are coming in every day, right?
Mm.
So those who work in the hospitality industry, the reality is that unfortunately, you can't say, well, on one hand, you can't say, oh, I don't want to get immunized. This is my rights, because your individual rights are going to result in that your hospitality industries are going to be stifled. So,
Mhm.
that's the reality in which we're living. So that's the situation in Bermuda. And Eden, you can answer for what's happening in Cayman Islands as far as hospitality workers.
Well, I think a lot of people in the tourism industry are vaccinated. We have a pretty high percentage within the sector. Um, there are still a good amount of people who aren't, and I personally don't think that Caymanians within their own country should be forced to, but I do see the wisdom in having work permit holders vaccinated. And if for no other reason, for the simple reason that we do not know what travel is going to be like in the future, and if they ever have to be repatriated for any reason, even if it's a family emergency, they need to know that they can travel. Also, it shouldn't be that that a foreign worker who has a choice to work here or not slows up the process of our tourism industry reopening when the people who own and invest in tourism businesses here are here. We're in Cayman, right? We don't have a choice to just say, oh, I'm going to go to America or go to Canada or go to England or go to wherever. So it's not fair for the rights of Caymanian tourism business owners to be compromised by what is an unsound medical decision. And in short, to me, we're at war. And the best weapon we have at our disposal is a vaccine. People who personally don't want to take up that weapon, that I understand that. If you have concerns, unfortunately, legitimate concerns are being crowded in with um, myths that people pick up from the latest WhatsApp forward and things like that. So you have a lot of disinformation that's unfortunately confusing the real legitimate questions of people who have vaccine concerns are asking. And that's unfortunate, and that's a disservice to the discussion as a whole. But I um, I don't feel like there should be a need for mandates if we have a wise approach to it, if we have ensure that people have the right information about the vaccine or having real discussions about it and getting real information on it. Um, but I do see the need for mandating it among healthcare workers, and again, we're at war. Certain liberties are going to be taken aback and regulated and constrained. That's how it was when we were locked down for weeks and weeks and weeks, and we couldn't go anywhere, and I had to walk my dog at a certain time of day, and I could only go to the grocery store on the H days, and all of that type of thing, and we all weathered that together. Right now, I need to go and register for our employment opportunity place that's already bogged down because they're saying I need to do that in order to get my assistance for my tourism, for being a displaced tourism worker. It makes no sense to me because I'm a business owner. Why am so? But I'm going to go and do this thing because I'm being asked to do that by my government because that's what they feel is the next thing to do. And we all need to make sacrifices. So I think that as long as people are willing to accept the responsibility in this crazy, scary time full of crazy, scary decisions and choices we have to make, that if you're not vaccinated, you may not be able to get into a restaurant. You may not be able to get work at a place where you thought you might be able to get work. If you choose to go and get trained to be in the tourism industry, you may need to get vaccinated in order to be on the front lines and in order to be a bartender or serve a table at a restaurant or be a work at reception at a hotel. And these are the type of things that we have to accept. So I hope that people are accepting the emergency situation that we are in, and like all adults have to, are willing to deal with the benefits and consequences of our decisions as they come. If I've been vaccinated since I was first ever able to, it didn't matter what my personal decision or choice was on it. even though I did the research and I was satisfied with what I felt was I needed to know in regards of vaccine safety. But I have a close family member. My mother is at risk, and I shared households with her during the lockdown and stuff. So we had to be very, very careful. And as soon as the vaccine came out, we went and got it, because that's one thing that's not going to happen is I'm not going to be responsible for my mother catching COVID. You know what I mean? And I work in the tourism industry, so it was that whole other thing. Plus, I have a child who's under the approved vaccination age, so I have all those things to juggle. That it doesn't matter what my personal opinion is on the matter of the vaccine. I have to do that out of a greater responsibility for my community, for my son, and for my family. And I hope that people are seeing that the same way. And if they make the personal decision to not get vaccinated, that they are okay with dealing with the limitations and regulations that are almost certainly going to be coming, because we are seeing it happening. And I can't imagine that some hotel or some restaurant wants to be ground zero for the first time community outbreak happens in Cayman since last year. After we've come this way, no resort is going to want to say, oh, well, we're just going to play it by ear. You know what I mean? Nobody wants that headline. So it's coming. There is going to be limitations on being able to get into places, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be happening throughout Caribbean jurisdictions and any place where tourism is heavy, because they're going to have to mitigate those, they're going to have to mitigate the ways in which we are able to spread it. Nothing is 100%, even the vaccine isn't 100%, but if we layer approaches and layer safety protocols, then we can get that down to a very, very low, and the vaccine is key to that. And people who don't have the vaccine, following certain regulations is probably going to be a key part of it as well.
Thank you, Eden. We're actually running out of time now, because although the internet is free, radio time isn't, and Brother Dawn has other things to do. So we are going to pick up where we left off next month, if not before. But I want to thank, on behalf of the people of Bermuda, I want to thank both of you for taking time, not just the hour that we've been here, but the hours beforehand where we actually put in a lot of work behind the scenes. And I want to thank Mrs. Smith Archer for coming up with the brilliant idea of having us on StreamYard. I want to thank the persons that have been tuning in, whether in Bermuda or the Virgin Islands, or those that are listening via StreamYard and Facebook. Thank you for your questions. We are trying to make this a regular monthly show. So tune in until the next announcement of the next show. It may not necessarily have to be via ear. We can do it online at any time. Mm-hmm. And because we can get guests from other islands to talk about these things. So I will, any closing remarks, Mrs. Smith Archer?
Well, just to say thanks again, Chris, for this opportunity to participate in the conversation. Glad to have met Eden, and I definitely love that acronym about rascal. I have to bring that over to the Virgin Islands and create some rascals. But definitely, let's keep this going. I think a lot of people are, they're hungry to hear what's happening in our sister territories, and there are some very important, I think, topics or issues affecting all of us. So it's good to have the camaraderie. We feel that it's not just us out there. So looking forward to the next time to be here and having territory talk.
All right. And Eden, and any closing remarks for the people of the overseas territories?
Thank you so much for having me on here. It is vital that we make connections as Caribbean people. And I know that we didn't get around to talking about all the other topics, but again, we have many shows obviously to do together. And then I got a T-shirt for you already, Shayna. So we get the rascal recruiting going all the way around the Caribbean. That's for sure. So really great to connect, and let's be one as Caribbean people. Let's learn about each other, appreciate each other, support each other, and make this region as strong as it is beautiful. Because we are just a beautiful people, and we need to look out for one another.
Okay. And because we had the pleasure of StreamYard, we can actually have this show online sometime later on today, right, Mrs. Smith Archer?
Sure, anytime.
Okay. And before I go, as I said, there was a hint of nepotism. Um, this is the power of the internet. A few years ago, last year, I want to say, I was invited to be on a radio show in the Virgin Islands via the internet. And there were a number of us from different territories. And there was a young lady who was representing the Virgin Islands. And, she's very articulate, extremely articulate, I should say. And last month, I was invited by another lady, Miss Potter, Melissa Potter, to speak to a group via Zoom in the Virgin Islands about another situation that we'll get into another day. And there was this lady, and she said, "Hey, do you remember me?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you were on that radio show." And long story short, a couple of days later, the lady says, "What did that lady say?"
I think we're cousins.
She said, "Really?" And we said, "How are we cousins?" And she said, "My mom is blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, "Oh, let's see. That's who my mom's family is as well. The Frasers and the Thomases of the
Mhm.
Virgin Islands. Carrot
Yeah.
Bay, Zion Hill, Seacoast Bay. So
Yep.
let me proudly introduce my cousin, blood cousin, double cousin actually, probably triple
Yeah.
cousin because we know how things go in the islands. Shayna Smith Archer. Formerly, her mom is Mrs. Your mom is
So my mom is Belviana Fraser Smith, and her mother, so my
right,
grandmother, is hailing out of Pleasant Valley, Seacoast Bay area.
right. And my mom is June Fraser Thomas. So
Yeah.
we are family. So we have to wrap up. And thank you. Love you all. Whether Bermuda, Cayman Islands,
Yes.
Virgin Islands, or whatever island, we love you all. And we'll talk again
Yes.
soon.
All right. Bye bye.
Brother Dawn, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right.